Hi everyone, hope you're enjoying the sunshine we have at the moment. I'm not David Walliams, sadly. I'm Simon Phillip, although some people call me Si, or Philip, or even Dragon, but don't ask about that. But you may have noticed that at the moment a lot of authors and illustrators are recording videos of themselves reading their books to help entertain those teachers and children still at school, and also everyone stuck at home as well. And I thought I would do the same thing. But I'm not going to read someone else's book, because that would be a bit weird. I'm going to read you one of my books. And I'm going to read you the first book in my series about a young wizard called Fred, because the second book, which you can see behind me in my very subtle marketing move, is out at the end of the month. It's called Fred, Wizard in Trouble. But the first book in the series was called Fred, Wizard in Training, and it looked like that, if you can see that. But it also looked like that. This was the first version, and it was called Fred, Wizard versus Lizard. But I assure you it's the same book, just with a new cover and a new title as well. And I thought I would read you this in the run-up to the publication of this at the end of the month. And I thought I'd read you a chapter a day, or put up a chapter a day, show you some of Sheena Dempsey's brilliant illustrations as well. And by the time I've done all of that, we will pretty much be at the end of the month, which is when Fred, Wizard in Trouble comes out. So there are 13 chapters in this book, so I'm going to make 13 videos. And we might as well crack on. So, chapter 1. This is a story about Fred. Now, Fred looked like any other ordinary boy. He had 2 eyes, a nose and a mouth on his face, and on each side of his head was a pink, fleshy ear. As you'll know, these features are common. Rarely does a young boy have more or less than 2 ears, although sometimes you do hear about it. But only if you have lots of ears yourself. If you don't have any, you won't hear a thing. Like many boys, Fred liked sausages, and chips, and ketchup. He was perfectly happy to eat them on their own, but he loved it when they all appeared on the same plate at the same time. He found toilets quite funny, as many boys do, not to mention some girls and plenty of grown-ups too. In fact, sometimes, if the mood took him, Fred combined all of these things at once. That is to say, sausages, chips, ketchup and toilets, and had a bit of a feast while sitting on the loo. Odd, I know, but not necessarily unordinary. The thing is, sometimes even ordinary looking boys can turn out to be not very ordinary at all, once you know a bit more about them, that is. And Fred was one of these boys. And the reason he wasn't very ordinary is because Fred was a wizard. Well, sort of. It depends a bit on how you look at it. You see, if the sort of wizard you're thinking of performs magical marvels that boggle your eyes and blow your mind, unforgettable things that make you rush to tell the nearest person, if that's the sort of wizard you're imagining, then Fred was definitely not one of them. If, however, when you imagine a wizard, they're pottering around the house, doing the boring chores that you and I do, only a little bit quicker because they can cast a spell, then yes, Fred definitely was a wizard. You might think how amazing it would be to do the washing up without getting your hands wet, force the cat to do your homework, or be able to flick the light switch in your bedroom without ever getting out of bed. But for Fred, who could do all of these things, it was really very dull. Chores and manipulating cats is very low-level magical stuff, you see, and, quite frankly, any wizard worth his salt doesn't really consider it magic at all. If that were all you could do, and it was all that Fred could do, you should be very embarrassed, they'd say. Unfortunately for Fred, his family was full of wizards and witches worth their salt. He had 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters, all of whom were worth a great deal of salt indeed. Salty heaps of the stuff. They were saltier than a seriously sweaty sardine swimming in Salt Lake City's lake of salt. By the way, if anyone asks you, what's the saltiest thing in the world, you can confidently tell them it's that sardine. Fred's siblings were always showing off, hovering in midair, disappearing in a flash, then reappearing as a dog to frighten the cat, turning chalk into cheese, pulling hats out of rabbits. Yes, you did hear that correctly. Fred's eldest brother Wallace was so good at pulling hats out of rabbits that he held the world record for it. 342 hats out of the same rabbit in an hour. Luckily, he was also exceedingly charming, so Clive, the rabbit, despite being a little surprised, didn't stay upset for long. He even let Wallace keep the hats. And Wallace wasn't the only high flyer in the family. Fred's 3-year-old sister Wilda could already transform butterflies back into caterpillars, as well as count to infinity twice. His other sister Willow had somehow found a way to make lemonade from limes and was extremely popular for having invented the world's first chocolate teapot that didn't melt. Then, of course, there were the twins, Wilbur and Wolf, who constantly reminded Fred, and everyone else for that matter, about their enormous list of accomplishments. These included making fire by rubbing 2 ice creams together, pulling wheelies on unicycles, unscrambling scrambled eggs, unfrying fried eggs, unpoaching poached eggs, unlaying laid eggs, which is really quite complicated if you think about it, discovering Bigfoot, discovering the Loch Ness Monster, discovering the Lost Kingdom of Atlantis, discovering the 27th letter of the English alphabet on the same afternoon as finding Bigfoot, Nessie, Atlantis, and an old shilling down the back of a sofa. Wonderfully wacky one-word certificate advanced level 92. Being appointed deputy permanent representatives of the Russian Federation to international organisations in Vienna and Milton Keynes. The 2004 Royal Commendation for Raising Awareness of the Plight of Badgers Award. Being appointed principal Brexit negotiators. Becoming honorary members of the UN Academy of Natural Sciences. Becoming honorary members of the UN Academy of Unnatural Sciences. And the Swim England Rainbow Distance 10 metre Award. Armbands and breathing apparatus permitted. Fred didn't take all their claims seriously. He knew, for instance, that his brothers couldn't have discovered Einstein's theory of relativity before Einstein did, nor could they claim to have invented gravity, or the Bermuda Triangle, or cottage cheese. Even so, Fred was made to feel all the more useless and insignificant by their loud and persistent boasting. "Oi, Fred," they'd shout, "are you still doing the washing up? I hope you don't mind, but we've borrowed your wand because the magic we're doing is so advanced we need 3 of them, and yours never gets used properly anyway." His brothers and sisters were never made to waste their time on magic or household chores like Fred was. It was the only use his parents could see for Fred's limited magic, but always made him feel like the odd one out. That his parents named him Fred didn't exactly help matters either. Why hadn't they given him a name beginning with W, like the rest of his siblings? Apparently, he should have been called Wilfred, but instead of correcting the mistake on his birth certificate, his parents decided to try something different. It was clear as soon as Willow was born that they regretted the experiment. No wonder Fred was less magical than the rest of them. He'd been up against it from the start. And he knew he was a big disappointment to his parents. How? Because of birthday cards like the one he received this year. "Darling Fred, wishing you a very happy birthday. How time flies. 8 years old. Let's hope this next year is a more magical one for you and us. We know you try hard and that not everyone can be as brilliant a wizard or witch as your brothers and sisters and ourselves. There's only so much magic to go around one family after all. But please try to hide your inability a little bit better. With love, but mainly disappointment and a sprinkling of embarrassment, your proud-ish Mum and Dad." It was after reading this card that Fred made a decision. He had to become a better wizard. He was fed up of being the family joke. Every time his siblings made fun of him or left him out, it made his heart ache. But most of all, he longed to make his parents proud. Just once. Things had to change. But how? He didn't have a clue. So that was chapter 1. And I forgot to say earlier on that if you are a teacher, please feel free to share this in your school with those children still there. And I hope you all enjoy it. Tune in tomorrow for chapter 2 of Fred, Wizard in Training. See you then.